So let's now create an animated list under these two buttons. So the first step is we'll replace the size box. So we'll replace this with an animated list. We have an item builder. And this will run a function for every item in the list. And we want to build out the widget that will be displayed. So in this case, we'll use a list tile. So the item builder gives us access to an index, which will help us track the position for every item in the list, and also an animation. So we can use that to apply any type of animation that we want when we insert or remove an item from this list. Now we'll sync this up with a database, but first let's plug in some dummy data just to get it going. So in words, we'll select some words. So it doesn't matter which ones. Jump back to review page. And we'll create a variable. So this is a list of type word. Import the model class. So now we've got some words to work with. Let's update this with the list. So first of all, we want to set an initial item count. So this will be set to review words dot length. So therefore the index will run from 0 up to whatever number this is. Now before we run this, I'm also going to refactor out the list tile into its own standalone widget. We'll name it word tile. So this will represent every single word. So we'll pass in each word. And now we can display that with the list tile. So we use the title property. So here we can select the English, pinyin, and character. We'll just put the English for the time being. And now we need to pass in the word. So the word will be our list of words, and we can use the index we're given by this function. Hot reload. Alright, cool. So we've got 5 words populating on the screen. So now let's update this to an animated list. So the first step is I'm going to assign a list key. So I'll just create the variable name here. Then up here, let's create that key. So list key is the name we gave it. So this will be a global key, which is of the type animated list state. So now we can access animated list state through the list key, and now we can call a couple of handy methods, insert item and remove item, to run an animation when we insert or remove an item into the list. So let's look at that now. So we've passed that key in. So let's create a method to insert an item into the list. So we'll make this a private method just down here. We'll write insert word. So this will take in a word that we want to insert into the list. So now we'll use the list key, that variable we just created. We'll select the current state getter, which will get the animated list state. And now on that, we can call insert item and remove item. So in this case, we want to first select insert item. So we'll now insert an item into this list at this index. So at the moment, let's just put it at the end of the list. So we'll put review words dot length. And we have a null error here, so we'll just add the null operator, and that's gone. And we also need to update the underlying list. So we need to keep track of 2 things, the animated list state, and we also need to manage the underlying list. So we'll just write review words dot insert, so a similar method. The index will be the same index. Just copy this here, paste it in, and then the item we're inserting is word. It's passed into this method. So let's call this from the button insert card. So coming up here, we have a header button on pressed. Remove that print function. Insert word, and we can just select any random word. So we'll select duck, paste that in. Now let's do a hot reload. And here we go. So we're inserting the word duck, but obviously there's no animation that's running. So to get this working, we need to actually create the animation widget to run the animation that we want. So first of all, I'm just going to cut this word tile and put it in its own Dart file. Paste this in. and reference that new library, import. Okay, now back in WordTile, we can now set up the animation that we want to run. And in this case, we want a slide animation. So when we insert a card, it'll slide horizontally onto the screen. So to do that, we'll wrap the list tile in a slide transition animation widget. So position takes in an animation of type offset. So let's set up a tween to define the slide animation. So we'll name this tween offset. So this will be set to a tween offset. We have the begin position. So we want this to be off the screen horizontally. So the first number is horizontal that we pass in. So we'll put 1, so off the screen. And then we have an end position. And this will just be 2 zeros because it'll just be the original default position. And we have an error here because it's saying the variable we've set up is initialized with a non-constant value. So to get around that, we'll just remove the const keyword from the constructor, and that solved that error. Okay, so we've got the tween offset. We also need to create an animation object to link up with this tween. So let's create an animation. So now we can pass animation in, and we can use the drive method, and we can then pass in the tween offset variable. Okay, so now this slide transition will run based on this tween offset. It'll slide in from the right into the screen when we insert an item. So the last thing is we need to pass in the animation object into this class. So let's create a required parameter. And if we jump back to review page, so where do we get this animation object? So it's given to us by the item builder function, animation here. So we can just pass this in directly like that. So let's see how that looks. We'll do a hot reload. And cool, we can see that duck is now flying into the screen from the right. So now we can insert a single word. We actually want to update this. So when we open review page, all of the words will automatically animate onto the screen. So therefore, we can update this method easily. So we'll change this to insert words. And instead of inserting a single word, we'll insert a list of words. Update this name to words, so make this the plural. Okay, and we can do this by using a for loop. So I will run up to words.length, so however many words we pass in. Now we can cut these two methods, paste them in. Alright, so firstly, the index should be changed to the I variable from the for loop, because we'll loop through the words one by one. And likewise, for the insert method, we call on the underlying list, and it'll be words at the index of I. Okay, so now where we call this method, we need to change what we pass in. So at the moment, we're just passing in an individual word. Let's create a list of words to pass in. So we'll just create a variable. And let's just cut everything out of review words, and we'll put this in initial words. And now we can just pass the initial words variable straight in. So now let's do a hot restart. Jump back in. Alright, so the screen is empty because review words is now empty. Now let's insert. And cool, everything has now flown into the screen. So exactly what we want. So I'll just update that name to insert cards. So we'll update the logic soon, so this runs when the page loads. But firstly, let's just complete the methods here. So we have insert words. Let's also create a private method, remove word. So this will remove a single entry. So again, we need to pass in the word that we want to be removed. And again, we use the list key and select the current state, which will return the animated list state. And on that, we can call remove item. So this is pretty much the same idea, except there's just a couple more steps. So firstly, this will remove an item at this index, but it's going to remove this item immediately from the animated list. So what we need to do is to create a variable to store the item that we want to remove. So therefore, we can have it animate off the screen, otherwise it'll just disappear straight away. So we'll create a variable, we'll name this W, that'll just store the word that we pass in. So again, remove item is going to immediately remove the item that we pass in at this index, but actually we want that item to animate off the screen, so we don't want it to disappear straight away. So we'll just store that word in a variable, and also we're given this function which will build that widget as it animates off. So for the index, we'll put review words, and to find the index we can use the index of method and pass in W. And now for our function here, that's going to build the widget as it animates off the screen. So we want to return the widget that'll be displayed. So that'll just be the word tile, so that won't change. So here we'll pass in W. If we pass in the word directly, the widget would actually appear to change as it animates off. Okay, we have a null error here, so we'll just use the null operator, just as before. And lastly, we just need to update the underlying list. So review words, we'll use a similar method, remove, and we can just pass in W. So to get this to run, what we'll do is we'll create an X icon, a clear icon on each of these tiles, so when we tap it, it'll animate the word off. So we'll jump into word tile, and in the list tile, we can use the trailing property, so this will be at the end of the list tile. We'll use an icon button. So let's select the icon. So select the clear icon, and we have our callback. So a hot reload, and we can see we've got the clear icon at the end. So when we tap one of these, we want that word to slide off the screen. So what we can do to communicate about what button has been pressed, we can run a callback which will pass back that information. So we'll create a callback, so of type void callback. So this is just a function that'll run, and we'll name this onPressed. And because I've set void callback as a nullable type, this is not required. So therefore, we'll place it inside of the function body here, onPressed. If this is not null, indicated by the question mark, we'll then run the function that's passed in. Alright, so if we tap this button, we'll call a function that's been passed in, and then inside of that function, we can trigger the animation to run. So back in review page, inside of the word tile widget, we can pass in a function here. So we'll write in remove word, and this will be review words at the index. Okay, so let's do a hot reload. Let's remove an item, and cool. We can see that the items are flying off the screen. And we'll create one final method to clear all of the flashcards at once when we tap the clear cards button. So clear all words. We don't need to pass in anything because this is just going to clear all of the words on the screen. We'll apply the same idea with insert words by running a for loop. I'm just going to copy this code here with the list key, paste this in. The item, the index we pass in can be 0, so the first item, because we'll be looping through one by one. And the word that we want to animate, we can put in review words at the index of I. Now to avoid any conflict with this for loop, we'll just remove everything from review words at the end. So we can call the clear method on review words after this for loop has run. And we need to put this inside a callback just to avoid any conflict with the for loop. So it'll clear all of the words after that for loop has run. So just inside the callback, we'll run the clear method. Okay, So clear all words is going to loop through all of the words on the screen and animate them off one by one. And then once that's done, we'll clear all of the words in the underlying list. So now we can call this method. So remove the print function and clear all words. So this is inside the callback when we tap clear cards. Now let's do a hot restart. Insert cards, clear cards. Cool. So let's just improve the animation a little bit more just to complete it. So we'll go to word tile. Let's improve the animation by just applying a curve. So to do that, instead of passing in the tween offset inside of this drive method, we can instead pass in a curve tween, and we can now set any curve we want. So we'll select ease in out sign, but we still need to pass in the tween variable, so we can just chain the drive method again at the end of it here, and then pass in tween offset. So that's nice and easy. We've now applied a curve. The next thing I think will look good is if each item animates in from a different direction. So left, right, one by one. So to do this, we can use the index of each item to determine whether it slides in from the left or the right. And then what we can do is just create two offsets. So the first offset can be tween offset left, and we'll create a second one, tween offset right. So we'll put a minus sign on the first offset, and the second one will be from the right, so this is a positive integer. So we can just use this as a condition to check whether the number is even or odd. If the number is even, then we'll return tween offset right. If the number is odd, we'll return a tween offset left. So the final thing is we just need to pass in the index into this widget. So we'll go to review page, the index. So we can just pass in the index directly that we get from the function. So we also need to update word tile here. So the index, to get that, again, we'll write review words, use the index of method, which will find the index, then clear all words, index, and we'll pass in I. So this will be from the for loop. Okay, let's test this. Hot reload, insert cards. Cool, we can see all of the cards have flown in and the animation looks a lot better now. Let's clear the cards, and that looks really good.